Okay, so this is gonna be a very in-depth explanation on what the Omegaverse is and like the types of people in it and the type of tropes you can get. And this is gonna be a very simple explanation for normies who are beginning to enter the Omegaverse or dudes whose girlfriends are obsessed with the Omegaverse. So first we're gonna start off with the type of relationships that will take place in the Omegaverse. So in the Omegaverse, usually everyone in there is like homosexual into like today's standards. So men will be with men, women will be with women. Almost all 90% of the time, there are some yaoi manhwas. I mean, there are some manhwas which will have men times women, where women will impregnate the man, but it's kind of rare to see that. Usually, in yaoi, there are three types of people. In the Omegaverse, there are three types of people, and it is omegas, alphas, and betas. Omegas are usually smaller type of men, and they are very weak. They are seen as weak in the Omegaverse. Usually feminine looking, and they don't have a lot of testosterone. They are usually very pretty, and they're almost like femboys, and that femboys are really hot. So they're usually seen as very petite. They're usually more rare than alphas. Alphas are usually born like they're more normal in the Omegaverse, and unfortunately a lot of things that happen is there is a specific type of alpha called a dominant alpha, where they are more rare. They will release something called all of the people in the Omegaverse except betas will release something called pheromones, and pheromones are basically things that will make your another gender react. So if an alpha releases his pheromones, an omega usually will feel them more and will be very affected by them, and they will become like almost like very like affect like it'll hurt them, like they'll feel weak and they'll need someone to save them, and alphas usually use that to take advantage of them. And omegas can also release their pheromones, but it's like almost like a double-edged sword, because it will affect an alpha, but it will make the alpha want to do inappropriate stuff to the omega, and the omega usually can't fight back because they're usually so weak due to the lack of testosterone. um um and betas are almost like a very rare type. They're not very rare, but it's better than being an omega. It's not as good as being an alpha, but a beta will not be able to feel pheromones at all. They do not get turned on usually. They're like a normal human in society, and usually they don't end up with people. And it's honestly more lucky to be a beta, because you won't get a heat cycle. Omegas experience something called heat cycle, which is seen as almost like a girl's ovulation. They will get very turned on. They will need someone. They want to sleep with an alpha, and usually they are prescribed stabilizers in order to control that. But if they don't, they start sweating. It's like ovulation, but 10 times worse, and they will need an alpha to help go inside of them and release that type of hormones affecting them. An alpha's type of cycle is called a rut, and an alpha will feel inclined to attack an omega and like basically essay him and grape him by all means, just to get him out of this rut. Alphas, it gets more dangerous the more powerful the alpha is. If it's a dominant alpha, you will probably need to want to run away from him and stay clear of him at all costs, because he will attack you. Very common tropes in Omegaverse are Omega times Alpha, and it's usually an Omega will be with an Alpha, and an Alpha will be with an Omega. But there are some certain circumstances where the universe will mess something up, and like there are very rare cases such as Alpha times Alpha, where a dominant alpha will start becoming attractive to a regular alpha who is not feeling in touch with his gender. Like, it's almost as if he wants to change his specific gender role, and he starts feeling inclined to wanting to get pounded by another alpha. An example of that type of story is Define the Relationship, where the main character, he starts experiencing something from the medication he's taking, and he needs another dominant alpha to help him out and control his hormones. But then they start beginning to fall in love, and they just it's alpha times alpha. It's basically being like gay in today's society. It's not seen as normal. It's very abnormal, and alpha times alpha will always be like seen as odd. Another type of trope similar to alpha times alpha is omega times omega. The only type of story that I've seen with that type of trope is Omega Bite. And basically what happens in Omega Bite is this blonde one is a dominant Omega, which is very rare. Dominant Omegas want to top people instead of bottom. But they do get wet from their behind during their heat cycle. Getting wet from behind, you don't need lubricant like in today's in real life. You produce something called slick, which is kind of what girls produce in their vaginas, where they get wet. And basically men will get wet too, but a dominant omega will feel horny in the front and wet in the back, and he will be attracted to even alphas. And in this specific story, this dominant omega, the blonde one, becomes attracted to an alpha. But the problem is the alpha does not want to get topped by the omega. So the dominant omega injects him with some sort of special sterilization where he becomes inclined to becoming an omega himself. So then the dominant omega takes advantage of him. That's a very in-depth brief explanation on what the Omegaverse is and how inclined people can get. Usually the most popular way in the Omegaverse usually takes place in Korean manhwas, which is a type of comic. Usually you can find it online through illegal websites, or you can pay for it. There are women Omegaverse, but that's a completely different genre of the books, where it is called Yuri, and you can also find those too. I might make a video on Yuri Omegaverse explained. I have not read one yet, but I will do some research on it and try to understand more about it, because it does seem interesting. But that is all on today's Omegaverse explanation.